purpose of this little video is to show you how to use the virtual permissions and permissions templates functions to copy the permissions from one folder to another folder or items within Content Server, even if they're in a completely different part of the taxonomy. So the very first thing we're going to be able to do is to open up the Permissions Manager dialog. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy the permissions that are currently in place on the legal folder to a subfolder within the utilities structure. So in a completely different part of the taxonomy. So the very first thing I'm going to do is open up Permissions Manager. And from the screen, you can see that there is a set of permissions existing on the legal folder, which is a combination of groups and users, and quite a variety of different access levels on each one of those items. You can also see that when I open up the permissions dashboard for this folder, I'm already in virtual permissions mode, and that's because last time I was viewing this folder in this browser, I was in virtual permissions mode. So it doesn't remember what mode you were using before in the last time you came to this location. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch across to the Edit Permissions dialog just by clicking on this button here, and I bring up the new permissions, the new Edit Permissions dialog, and you can see here this is where I would be adding users, editing the rights for existing users, or removing users or groups to the access for this one item. But you can also see that at the top I've got this select template or load template dialog, and that's because I'm actually in virtual permissions mode when I came into this edit permissions dialog. So if I just switch back to item permissions and looking at the actual permissions that are in place for the legal folder, you can see that the bar at the top goes to grey and the templating dialog disappears, or buttons disappear. You can also see that I've lost some of the buttons at the bottom. They will reappear as soon as I click virtual permissions, and I'll do that now. So we're back to virtual permissions. I have orange bar, so very visual, you can see what's going on. And you can see at the bottom I've got revert to item permissions, save as template added to my options. But very importantly, at the top I have select template. So this, if I select this template, I can see a number of items that already exist in my personal template volume, and I also have an option to browse the system templates, which are the publicly available or publicly accessible templates that have been saved in the system. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to save this set of permissions that I have on the legal folder. I'll save that as a new template. Now, the very first time you do this, it will, and if your user does not already have a personal permissions template folder, it will create that folder for you, and it will save this new template into that folder, and it will give you ownership of that template, and it will deny access to everybody else. So it's very personal, and I'll explain how that works a little bit later in this video. So what I'm going to call this is now, I'm going to call this a demo template to copy to remote folder. Being a remote folder, I mean remote in terms of taxonomy. Now I'm going to create as a new template. I could override an existing template if I wanted to, but in this case I'm just going to save it as a new template. Okay, so it's saved, and if I now select this drop down, you can see that I've got this demo template to copy to remote folder template in there. So that's already in there, and I have to do nothing else except close out of here. And now I just navigate to the location that I want to apply that template to. So I'll go back to my workspace and I'll go into utilities. And what I'll do is I will edit permissions manager from here. And you'll see that under the electricity, under utilities, I have got obviously a completely different set of permissions. This is a very simple set of permissions that it's just been set up by default when this system was configured, and everything's been inherited except for this water folder and its children. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that template I just created from the legal folder, and I'm going to apply that to the electricity and gas folder and all the children of the electricity and gas folder. There are 81 items. I'm going to be selective about that. I'm not going to apply it to maintenance. I'm not going to apply it to water, but I am going to apply it to the electricity and gas and all its children. I could actually be selective and open this, browse through into the electricity and gas subfolders and select individual items, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'll just show you how it works as a straight replace for that folder. And so the very first thing I have to do is I have to edit the permissions on the utilities folder itself. I'll jump into virtual permissions, I will select that template that we just created from the legal folder, and I will apply that. I'll update that, and I'll close this. And there are a couple of steps involved there, but now you can see that that the utilities folder is showing in virtual mode the exact same permissions that exist on the legal folder. So it's a completely separate part of the taxonomy. If I switch backwards to item permissions, it's still showing the real. I haven't changed permissions on the utility folder at all. But what I can do now is I can just select the electricity and gas folder, select replace, and replace permissions. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to push those permissions that I've pulled from the legal folder, and I'm going to push them down onto the electricity and gas folder, which, as we said before, is in a completely different location in the taxonomy. Just click replace, and I will preview because it'll show you what's going to happen. You would have seen in that dialogue, I skipped through. We could select a maximum number of levels, and so on and so forth, but we're not going to. We're going to push it down to the whole folder and its subchildren. Now 81 items are going to be updated, and I'll replace permissions. So typically, as is typically the case with Permissions Manager, I'm taking longer to do this than I normally would, simply because I'm explaining as I go. Um, the actual time to do this is very, very quick. I could do this probably in 2 or 3 minutes. It wouldn't be a problem at all. So 81, they've all been updated, done. And now you can see that inside the utilities folder, that the electricity and gas folder and all its children, if I just expand that, all its children have now got exactly the same permissions as the legal folder where we sourced those permissions from. Uh, However, if I switch back to the item permissions on the utilities folder itself, you can see that the color coding tells me it's different, and that's what I expect to see. I expect to see that that the permissions for electricity and gas are now quite different to its parent, the utilities. Okay, so that's how we do it. Now that's all good. Now, how does that look under the covers, and how's it managed? And as a user, how do you access this information? If you go to your tools menu at the top, you'll see that permissions template volume now exists, and the access to permissions template volume is in itself controlled by permissions. By default, it's got public access turned on. So if I open the volume up and I look at permissions manager in the volume, you'll see that public access is turned on. I've got CNC contents. So all of the templates that I've created have actually been created with public access turned on if they exist within the volume itself and not within these subfolders or these personal permissions template folders. You can see in here that there are two subfolders exist: the admin and the DS demo folder. Now that means that both admin and DS demo have created their own personal um, templates before. And if I expand admin, you'll see all the templates that I saw in the drop-down menu from the edit permissions dialog. And if you want to see one of those, all you need to do is open it up, and it will open up the template as an item in its own right. And you'll be able to see, and you can make changes to it and edit it just as you would any other item. You don't actually have to go into any item and edit the permissions on an item. You can just navigate here. But as you can also see, each of the folders is owned by the user itself. So this is owned by DSDemo, and they have full rights. There's no public access. The default group is still there, but has got no access. And the admin folder itself has got access for the admin user, full rights, no public access. If you wanted to promote one of those templates, so for example, if I wanted to promote demo template, to copy to remote folder for everyone to be able to access it. All I need to do is to move that up into the actual volume itself, out of the individual permissions template subfolder, and then give it public access rights, CNC contents, and everybody will be able to see it. Now I could also just give it CNC contents rights inside the admin folder, but that's not as effective as moving it up to the volume itself. So that's really it. That's how you use templates. And one final point I will make is that this is also available on collections. So if you want to apply a set of permissions from a source, create a template, and push it out across a range of documents that are in different parts of the system, you can do that through collections. That'll be the subject of a separate little how-to video. So I hope that helps. Thank you.